find that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys that are listening this morning is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath. To defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
Well, it doesn't show how can I explain the thing that is pain, knowing that you're right, blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
Blinded by the light.
Catch the Green American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and drop the sun.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamericans.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas. My guest today, first hour here, is Yaakov Rosenthal. He's the author of Unlock the Secret World of Teenagers. And he is a professor, a practitioner of graphology. Welcome, Yaakov. How are you?
I got well, Clay. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. I'm doing pretty well. I've got a feeling that the title of your book here may be a little misleading to our interview and our conversation. What is graphology? And I will get into how that relates to your teenagers in the book. But I've got a quote up here from one of your sites talking about, are you ready for a change, but do you feel stuck? And you talk about energy medicine that can clear the blocks that are keeping you stuck. Subtle energy therapies, including body and emotion code, have been the key to many people's healing. I kind of see the term physician heal thyself. And I've had a friend of mine he's a regular listener. His name's David Koss. He wrote a book about a new cure for cancer. And what he talks about is basically what he calls spinning your water, spinning your coffee, which I do every morning as I'm having a cup, as I'm doing the show. It's a matter of holding your hand in a certain position around your coffee cup, and he says it changes the molecular flow of the water and from the liquid, and it does improve the taste. It will kill carbonation if you do it on a Coca-Cola, but I really haven't been sick since I've been doing that. It's a subtle energy, but the energy is there. I wondered if that kind of related to what you do.
Well, Clay, I do a lot of things. One is energy work, but I must say this book is more about having people understand who they are, using their handwriting as the vehicle.
Okay.
And once someone understands who they are through their handwriting, it's an eye-opener. And why is that? Because when a teenager comes to me, or anybody, I don't ask them who they are. I just ask them to write a handwriting sample, and from the handwriting sample, I'll tell them who they are. And why that's interesting is that since I have no idea who they are before I met them, And now I'm starting to talk about some detail sometimes abuse at a certain age, feelings about other people, what the defense mechanisms are. They sort of hear themselves from the outside in. And I may verbalize something that they sort of knew, or I may verbalize something that they were blind to, or I might verbalize something in a different vocabulary than they had before. So now I've given them a different view of themselves. So I kind of call this the short, long way, because they get it quickly, but they didn't work on it. It's not like traditional therapy where the facilitator will help the person gain knowledge of themselves through their work. The way I function, usually the first time I meet somebody, is that they kind of know where we're going to go. And now they need to work on it, to own it, to understand it. So transformation usually doesn't happen instantly. It's like a small steps. But once someone feels that I have compassion for them and I'm competent, the teenager will open up to me quite quickly, sometimes 5-10 minutes. I'll know a lot of things about them because they think that I know it already anyway. So I'm already in a discussion with them because they think that I have compassion for their place, I understand where they are, and I'm competent in where I'd like to help them go. And the key for me with teenagers is analyzing their handwriting.
What does their handwriting tell you? I mean, doesn't our handwriting change as we grow older, as we become more accomplished?
The answer is yes, but to step back a little bit is how I can read personality in a handwriting in the first place. When you think a thought, Clay, and now you want to take that thought and you want to put the thought on a piece of paper, what moves your hand? When I ask that question to groups, the three popular answers are muscles, brain, and nerves. But in reality, when you're young, when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you're trying to learn how to spell and remember how the letters look, your brain is in control. It's very slow, and you can see it's very boxy. But once a child gets to the age of 10, 11, 12, 13, everybody's different. But around that age, when you know how to spell basically and you know how to make the letters, then all of a sudden it becomes more automatic. When a person passes away, their arms, their legs, their eyes, it's all there. It's still complete, but it's not moving. There is some life force that is left when the person is no longer alive. That life force, it depends on your orientation. You could call it a soul, whatever, how you want to label it, but that's what makes you move and function. That life force, that energy source, actually moving the hand. Once you have a thought, the arms in, and you write on a piece of paper. You can also call that energy source personality. So when you write on a piece of paper, that is your personality. Well, we've all been trained how to read what you wrote on that piece of paper. I went to school for a year and was trained how to read personality on that piece of paper. And you're correct, especially young people. I'll get a sample in September, in the beginning of the school year, and by January or May, I'll get another sample, and I can talk to that teenager how they've overcome some challenges, or how they have new challenges, or how they've changed their outlook in life because their handwriting has changed. When we get to our age, handwriting doesn't change that much, because we don't change that much, but there's still subtle changes.
Now, I study religions, I study political science, working on my master's degree in that. And I've said if you're omnipotent and omniscient, you know everything, you can do anything. You know, obviously your God, or what they refer to as God. But I think you'd have to be bored, and I think because he might be the only one of his kind in this section of the universe, he created us with a little spark of his divinity that we call the soul, or we call conscience, or we call ESP, and then he kind of sits back behind your eyes and my eyes, and we provide his entertainment, or as Shakespeare said, the whole world's a stage. And this is, I've said I don't believe God looks anything like Charlton Heston, that we're talking about the force that holds the atoms together. How does that relate to that concept, or that vision of mine? How does that relate to the energy work that you do in this handwriting analysis?
Okay, I can give you an example. It says in the Bible in Leviticus that we don't know what other people are thinking of us. Can't give you the chapter or verse, but we don't know what other people are thinking of us. So it's a challenge for us, because the nature of a person is to be concerned about what other people are thinking of you. So in the Bible, and whatever else you read, God's telling us where our challenges are and how to try to make us into a more complete person. How to diminish stress and increase peace. So the more tools that we have, the more we can understand and deal with what sometimes will cause stress. So we'll take this, for example, that teenagers are very concerned with how other teenagers look at them. And we can discuss why that is, but for this example, we'll just take that as a true fact. Well, you can find that in handwriting. That in handwriting, when kids are afraid to make a mistake, when they're writing, they'll cross out the mistake, and I call it a big blob. So when you look at that piece of paper, the big blob jumps out at you. They think subconsciously that they're hiding their mistake because they're worried about what other people are thinking of them. So if I hide the mistake, no one will know. But in reality, Clay, you and I know that everybody knows because they see the mistake, because that blob jumps at you. So when I'll counsel a kid, I'll tell them this fact, that you really do not know what anybody's thinking about you. I mean, I got the source from the Bible, but it's actually also true. So since I don't know, or you don't know what anybody's thinking about you, why worry about them? Just try to be the best you can be.
My mother was a worrier, and I really never understood it. I said, look, if you can if you got a problem and you can do something about it, do it. Don't worry about it. And if you've got a problem and there's nothing you can do about it, it doesn't do you any good to worry about it.
True.
Does that mean I was better adjusted than my mother, or what?
Well, I'm not, or nor are you, in competition with anybody. You are trying to be the best you can be. If you believe in a God and you believe in a purpose, you're trying to fill the space as best as you can, to be the best person you can. The competition with your mother doesn't really exist.
Okay.
Anyway, you can't measure best. I can measure temperature, I can go to a thermometer, I can measure height, I can go to a ruler. But I can't measure a best person. There's no way of codifying that.
Well, we're given free will, so we can choose whether we want to be good or evil, can't we?
That's a complicated statement there.
Okay.
Because if God knows everything that you do, how do you have free will?
To provide his entertainment, I believe, but
You didn't answer the question. If he knows everything about you, he knows what you're going to do in the future because there's no space-time, he's not connected to that. How is there free will?
okay, knowing and watching what we do. Maybe he watches behind your eyes and my eyes. Again, I feel that we're just his entertainment, and he doesn't interfere. He doesn't force us to do good. He doesn't force us to do evil. We've got a choice here, and the men that wrote the Bible were men just like us. Some of them tried to do it for betterment, tried to do it for a good, and some tried to do it for control. And I think one of the couple of the problems we have today is how do you fight evil without becoming evil? So,
well, okay, but in reality, this still didn't answer the question. So let me try to answer this question.
okay.
The present is not owned by us. The present's God's. He knows what I'm going to do in the present. He knew that you were going to call me, and when you called me. My preparation for that moment is my free will.
Okay.
My analysis of that moment is my free will. But the moment is owned by him.
All right, I can understand that.
So when I'm dealing with a teenager and he doesn't like what's happening to him, and you can see depression, I usually call that sadness, you see anger, you see different, you see that even horrible things happen to that teenager. I'll talk to them, and it's not easily understood or digested, but I'll talk to them that present moment is an educational moment for you that God sent you. You prepared for it in the future, it happened, and you analyze it in the past. How you analyze it will affect how you go further in the future. But that what happened in the present is something that God wanted you to experience, for better, for worse. And like you said previously, he's all good. He's all good. So in that, there is some spark that you needed to learn something from to become a bigger and better person. Now, when I'm talking to someone, I may not go, as I'm talking to you, there's many steps until I may say that last statement. But yet, if you believe that there's a God and you believe that there's free choice, somewhere along the line, God has to have his choice. So just to reiterate, you prepare for the moment in the future. The moment happens, that's God's. And how you analyze it, how you understand it, and when you look at the past, is how you are going to be as a person. Is it going to cause you stress? Is it going to cause you peace? Are you going to learn your lesson? Or are you going to need to do the lesson again? And that you can see in handwriting.
There's one of my guests in the chat room says that this is a good show for her because she has a 14-year-old granddaughter. Now, this analysis, you can, somebody could send you a letter in the mail or by email. There's a JPEG file. Can you do this analysis long distance? And people work on the computers a lot now. I've called that a double-edged sword. How does that figure in with what you do? And because not everybody can do this. I certainly wouldn't try to analyze somebody's handwriting. I appreciate the work and the effort that you put into this. How does that help somebody down there in Louisiana Bayou or New York? Or you're in New York, I believe. My condolences. I've been there.
Well, there's two answers. First answer, this is why I wrote the book, because I've taken about 20 indicators that I'm looking at in handwriting, but I found 6 of them that were connected to teenagers. That if you saw those 6, you could sort of understand at a basic level what was going on with that teenager. And then to answer the second question, I do this quite often. People send me, either they send me a scan or they send me the original in a mail, and I don't need to see the person. Sometimes I do use Skype or FaceTime, but I don't need to see the person. And I'll talk to the person over the phone. And we'll have they'll just listen to me, depends on the personality. Sometimes we'll have a very engaging conversation for an hour. And they will leave me with a better understanding of themselves. So your 14-year-old girl down in the bayou, it doesn't matter that I'm on the East Coast and she's down in Louisiana.
Okay.
I just need a sample of her handwriting.
Now, this is your business. What do you give me a ballpark? What do you charge somebody to do an analysis? And how do they use your analysis to make things better for them? How do they? What do they get from it, from your analysis, and how do they put it into practice?
The first visit with me is $125. I'll tape it, send them an MP3 of our discussion, and depends on the person. It'll last somewhere between a half hour to an hour. Depends on how many questions they want to ask me. After that, obviously, in where I live, I go to schools on a weekly basis. So once I've talked to a person, once we know who we are, after that I'm a life coach also. I'll do life coaching with them. Some kids just need a friend that understands them. Some kids who are going through a difficult time for whatever the details are just need someone to talk to. And I provide that ear. That I don't judge them. I hear them. I pat them on the back when I think they've done amazing. I've acknowledged them. The big thing is to say what you're going through is normal. I find that's a tremendous cure. I will get a handwriting sample. Depends on the teenager. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months after our initial visit, just so we can talk about their growth and their new challenges.
If you have a teenager that's troubled or breaking the law, stealing hubcaps, doing something like that, can you tell that from their handwriting? Can you tell that if they don't change in some way and start moving in a positive direction, they may end up in jail or juvie hauled? Does the handwriting tell you in that kind of detail about the person?
Well, I can't predict the future because everybody, like you said before, Clay, has free choice. But I can tell them where they are now, a lot of times how they see the world, what they're going through, and it's their choice. I love giving choice back to the person. Many people, especially teenagers, but many people blame other people for their problems. Your mother, for example, is a worrier, but it's not an excuse for you not to be a worrier. It's a motivation of what not to be. But if you grew up, Clay, as a worrier, it's not your mother's fault. You made those choices.
Okay.
You didn't learn your lessons. So I know kids, I know teenagers at risk that have gotten in trouble. They've been kids I've known for a number of years, and when they see me after the incident, and they'll say, yeah, I know I messed up. They'll use a different word, but I've messed up. And I say, I know you're done. So now what are you going to do now? So now you're in this new learning situation. What are you going to learn from it? Which way are you going to go? If you're a religious person, you know God forgives. You can get back into God's graces easily. Verbally. Emotionally and physically, it's much harder. So what are you going to do? How are you going to start? I usually don't mince my words, but I'm usually very gentle with my words. And this is what I try to point out in my book, that what you really haven't asked me yet, and I'd like to just interject this, why do teenagers have such a hard time? And I don't want to give you a chemistry or a physiology lesson, but just quickly, Clay, I'd like to just interject this, that up until about the age of 11, 12, the brain has been functioning, developing its pleasure sensors. If you look at little kids, all they want to do is run after joy, happiness, pleasure. Sometimes in horrific situations, pleasure could be a hit, but I don't want to go that deep or that detailed. Somewhere around the age of 12, the prefrontal cortex, the front of the brain that the cognitive part of the brain that's thinking, the morality kind of brain, the brain that sees good from bad, man from woman, me, you, separation, starts growing. It won't stop growing until about the age of 25. So you have a 12, 13-year-old teenager who's confronted with sometimes moral decisions for the first time. Their old brain, the brain of pleasure, is now in a fight with the brain of right and wrong, which is very young and still not matured. So teenagers make a lot of mistakes, and it depends on how adults treat them is how they're going to grow up, what choices they're going to make. A lot of things that are normal for a teenager, they get punished for. It's the first time they've ever done these things. So now the adult punishes them, so now it becomes a them against me, and I can't trust adults. Where adults is where they need to get their information from. So you see in handwriting where a lot of teenagers have isolated themselves from the adult and is only getting information from what I call their cult, their like-minded group speaking that knows almost as much as they know. So they've isolated themselves from the population that really they need. And you see it clearly in handwriting. And this is what I show in my book. You can see it clearly in handwriting. So once an adult understands where a kid's holding, how a kid sees his environment, you can start saying, hey, this is normal, and this is what you're missing out on. And slowly build trust. Trust is built, so I didn't make this definition up, but trust is built through competence, but also compassion. And through those two, by developing trust, you can help the kid understand who he is, she is, and understand their challenges. And actually, when life gets tough or confusing, they have adults to go to help guide them. And that's the purpose of my book. I can't be everywhere at one time, but my book, I hope, will help to raise the consciousness of adults, teachers, and parents to understand who their teenagers are and treat them in a more competent and compassionate way. And, sidebar, teenagers to understand who they are also and what they're going through.
Dina Gorkin, from the principal of Brosh Chomas Academy, really has written glowing analysis of your work. And she says her students Just Love You asked, when's Mr. Handwriting Guy coming again?
It's true. I was on vacation for a month, and I just walked back into three schools this week, and they run to me. They want to talk to me. They want to ask me some questions. They have things that they have to discuss with me. Like life, I find about 90% of the kids that I have a potential to talk to, I talk to. And I'm all volunteer. Out of a school of 50, maybe 2 or 3 of those kids won't see me.
Now you say that your book has a twofold agenda. One, to give patience and hope to parents and teachers of young teenagers, and 2, to give teenagers an understanding. So this book really should be shared between the children and their parents, huh? They should both be reading it, right?
I think so. I've had some teenagers upset with me about the title. The teenagers who didn't know me and actually went to a talk that I gave, and they sat in the front row with their arms crossed, mad at me from the beginning. But at the end, I remember one girl very clearly. She raised her hand in question and answer. She raised her hand, and she said that this is how she was when she first came into the talk. But she would like me to read her handwriting because she really thinks I understand. And I'm not gifted here. I happen to spend a lot of time doing this. But I think my book really helps parents to get a handle on what they're dealing with early. 13, 14, 15. By the time a kid gets to 18, 19, 20, the problems are magnified.
You also say the book isn't going to make you into a graphologist, nor is this the last book that needs to be written on the subject, but once you know some of the key details, the challenges and fears of every teen, you will be able to look at teens with more compassion. As a result, they will see you as being more understanding. It's what do you look for in the handwriting? What's the keys? What is it that you see in the handwriting that allows you to come to these kind of conclusions?
Well, like I said before, Clay, there are 20 things that are 20 major categories. But in my book, I've isolated 6 that I think are really important to understand teenagers. For example, how they approach the page, the margins, tells a lot about what their defense mechanisms are, what their feelings about themselves. And I want to back up just for 1 second.
Okay.
One thing doesn't mean the person's like that. You really need to know 2, 3. You start to have to see patterns in the handwriting. So you see one thing, you get an idea of the way the person might be, but you want to find other factors that support that. So, for example, if a child writes the upper margin way up on the top, so that's a kid who's not very friendly. He may be friendly, but he's watching the environment to make sure that the environment's safe. It's all about safety, that upper margin. So he's looking at that his new environment that it came in, and he's not going to volunteer much information. That's okay. But now if that same child writes from one edge of the page to the other edge of the page, you know he doesn't like to listen to people that he doesn't trust. So now you have 2 indicators that this kid is somebody who's like something's going on with him. He doesn't trust his environment. Things aren't very positive. So he wants to make sure he stays safe. And then you see that 14-year-old boy who writes the letter I. In English, it's the only language that the letter I is one letter. I know, I think it's Russian also, but In English, the letter I is really how that person sees himself in the relationship to his parents. So when this 14-year-old boy who writes all the way up to the top, and he writes margins edge to edge, and he writes the letter I straight, not a Palmer, the Palmer I, or the I, the box I, but he writes it straight. Here's a very independent boy. 14-year-old kids are not usually that independent. They may be fighting with their parents, which you can see that in the handwriting, but they rarely are independent of them. So now you know you have this 14-year-old kid who is cautious with strangers, doesn't like to listen to people he doesn't trust, and he's running his own show. Something happened. You know something happened with this kid in the past. So there's some reason why this kid is who he is. I'm not there to change him. I'm only there to help him understand how he looks at life and suggest what he's missing. The kid that I'm thinking of right now, parents were divorced when he was very young. Mother was divorced again when he was 9. He happened to like that stepfather. Mother gets remarried for the 3rd time, does not like the new stepfather. Father gets remarried, has 2 new kids. He lives a very complicated life, this boy. Can't trust adults. The ones that are closest to him have really messed things up in his mind. And he's had a lot of free time. He's kind of been lost in the cracks. So I'm not there to fix him. It's hard to fix other people, almost impossible. But I'm there to help him understand himself and know that there's somebody that actually understands where he's coming from. So when he does something stupid in the school, instead of getting kicked out, I can go in as an advocate and help the principal understand where this boy is coming from and what's an appropriate punishment for the kid, so he understands what he did. Because education is that. It's education, not teaching. You need to educate the teenager to become a productive human being.
Now, I've had people on my show like Charlotte Iserbite who talked about the dumbing down of America. I'm on the board of directors of Timothy Bible College, which is an online education system. Also, I helped start the Little Red Schoolhouse. Dr. Jake Wade is on my show on a regular basis. He's the dean of Timothy Bible College. And I've referred to our school system as the public fool system. And since the 10th plank on the Communist Manifesto is government control of education, are you seeing, you're getting out, you're going around to these schools, there's a lot of discussion right now about Common Core, and are the schools practicing education, or are the schools practicing indoctrination? Your opinion, sir.
Not my field. I'm dealing with the inmates and not the prison system.
Okay. Yeah, another one of my hot points. But how, if you're dealing with the inmates, you're dealing with the children, you're basically trying to equip them to deal with what they encounter in schools and life. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, and most teachers respect me and will listen to me, because I give them another way of understanding the children that they're trying to educate. So once they've gotten over the shock of who I am, because I'm a little alternative, they see that I'm actually trying to help them manage their class better. And we're successful.
Okay. Do you see any problems with our school systems, with our education systems? Or, I went through the 60s as a fairly young man, and we had a lot of problems with Vietnam. We had a lot of problems with Kent State. We had the war, we were protesting the wars. Today we've got a lot more external difficulties to deal with. It's hard to separate fact from propaganda today.
You got more basic problems. The cell phone, for example, the smartphone. Kids hacking into the Wi-Fi system of schools and activating their cell phones. The misunderstanding of human relations. It's different. It's when you and I went to school. It's so much more complex, and in some senses isolating. That you see the joke of two people sitting at a table and they're both texting each other. That human relationship is not there, and these kids carry movies and TVs in their pocket. So it's no longer going to a movie once a week. Sometimes some kids are watching 3 movies, 4 movies a day, and there aren't that many good movies. So they're watching a lot of stuff that's not so good, both content-wise and professionally.
Well, let's talk about that too. You mentioned computers. I mean, I live and work on my computer, and that's okay for me. I can do my radio show that I'm doing now, or my television show that I'm doing right now. I can do that, in the middle of a field if I've got the proper equipment with me. And but back to the schools and back to our teenagers, all of my homework was done by handwriting. Today, all of our homework and most of our schoolwork, even in the school that I'm on the board of directors, is all done by computer. How is that changing us? Or what is that? Or do people even write anymore? Do they? Nobody does a letter in handwriting anymore. How is that affecting us?
It's a good question. So as of today, there's rarely a teenager, rarely a person. I read all ages handwriting. There's rarely a person that I read that can't write anymore. Yes, I maybe 15, 20 years ago, I read the handwriting of a copy editor of the New York Times, a Harvard graduate, very bright person, and the New York Times was paperless for 40 years now, maybe. So he actually couldn't write. When you looked at his handwriting, he looked like an imbecile. He lost the ability to write. But I see very, very few people like that. Very few people. So I have a colleague who lives in Colorado, and over the past 15 years, I think longer now, she's documented that the switch from being a brain of expansion, between usually 1 to 5, and a brain of concentration, the left brain, from 5 on, which we'll call that ADD, ADHD, that she's found that the lack of handwriting, lack of the movement of the fingers and the muscles in the hand are correlated with the increase of ADD, ADHD. In the 30s, there used to be a penmanship teacher. And when you went to school, you had to write neatly, because when you got to be a senior in high school, that senior high school history teacher in English, she couldn't get 30 essays that they couldn't read. So the penmanship was strongly recommended so you could read the papers when you got to the older grades. Today, the kids have to figure out how to write by themselves, and they don't write as much. And it's correlated with the increase of that switchover from a right brain to a left brain. Now, this is very simple. There's much more to talk about this in this topic, but there seems to be, like this, my colleague in Colorado has exercises that, and she's seen that she says help people concentrate better by moving their hands, by going through the exercises and having the hands move in a circular manner, in an angular manner, that it really works. Just to give her a little plug, her name is Janet Farmer. I think her website is Right Brain, and it really works. I personally don't have time to do that, and I have a different focus, but the few times I've used her system, I've really seen that kids really respond to it. So it's a complex concept. To just be on the computer and just look at a screen and just look at a video and get educated, I think isolates us from that human contact, which is quite necessary for us to grow to be moral individuals, moral people.
I refer to the computer as a double-edged sword. You can analyze somebody's handwriting and send them a JPEG, or they can send you a JPEG of their handwriting, and you can respond on that. So it's certainly a benefit in that way. But I just got a letter from an ex-wife, and it was actually kind of a pleasure. Not necessarily. No, she didn't. She again, there wasn't any handwriting. It was all done. It was all done on computer or on a typewriter, and so it really had a cold feel to it, not like reading a letter that somebody had written in their own style. It didn't feel right, in other words. Felt kind of impersonal. Is this something that just, I mean, is this just a sign of our times, or are we losing something? Are we losing something? I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead. What?
It's so much easier to send an email than to write a letter, find an envelope, address the envelope, find a stamp, go to a mailbox. The comfort of your desk, you can write the email, hit a button, and all of a sudden they get it 2 seconds later.
Yeah, I like that. I like the convenience. I like the being able to take care of business like that. I like writing my novels on the computer. Matter of fact, I wrote some of them on typewriter, and it took me almost 40 years to get them retyped so I could edit them on a computer.
Okay.
It's convenience. I like that, but you're not going to be able to analyze anybody's personality from a typewritten letter.
No. And the guys in my field who were able to analyze typewriters to tell the FBI or law enforcement which typewriter typed that letter, they can't do that anymore either. All printers print the same, basically.
So how do you put this from, if somebody gets your book, and we've got about 10 minutes left, maybe 5 left in this segment. If somebody gets your book, how do they put that into play? I mean, do they sit down with their teenager, or even themselves, put something in script and writing and be able to analyze it themselves and understand certain things about themselves or their teenagers after reading your book, having your book there is a guide. Tell me about that. How do they use your book?
The first section, I describe these 6 indicators that I think are important. And each one, like if I can, each one is specific towards like a specific kind of teenager. For example, when you look at the line, how the teenager writes the line, most teenagers write in like a wavy line. I call it the roller coaster, because they're not secure in who they are. They feel up sometimes, they feel down sometimes, and their life is kind of a roller coaster, which can be exhausting. So once you understand that, and you can tell, and the teenager understands that is normal. It's normal for a teenager to be like that, which they'll discover that in my book. That they don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about all of a sudden when I was 12, 11, life was great, and all of a sudden I'm confused. I don't know where I go. I don't know who I am. I don't know how well people are treating me. I have trouble making decisions. I get in trouble in school now. Now all of a sudden you can just relax. You understand that this is normal. Normal to be confused a little bit. That ninth grade teacher understands that he or she's dealing with kids who are making decisions for the first time, and they're not. A lot of them are not very secure with who they are. Normal stuff. The second part of my book, I talk about more philosophy, which we've touched on today, on how to understand them. What we didn't talk about, and I'd like to mention a little bit, I coined the phrase OWE. OWE stands for own worst enemy. And a lot of kids are OWEs. They're amazing kids, but they don't think of themselves amazing. They're kids that you'll say are underachievers, or they're kids who think they have to be perfect to be good, or they're kids who just don't understand who they are, so they think they're not good enough compared to other people. And describing OWE, I'll say a third of the kids that I know have that syndrome, and I make fun of it a little bit. I call it a syndrome, and I tell them that they have a disease now, and I kind of build it up. And then I also tell them the anecdote for OWE is to be a BFF. And ask them, do you know what that is? They all chuckle at me. But most kids don't think that they're their best friend. They're overly critical of themselves. So in the book I describe this, and I describe how to be your best friend and what it means to be your best friend. It means how to understand who you are and that what you're going through is normal. So what I've tried to do in the book for a layman is to get a basic idea from handwriting of who the teenager is, and then a basic understanding on how to deal with who they are, and how to see that there's a bright future as opposed to a dark. And that's why I decided to write the book. I'm now in the process of writing a DVD for parents and teachers to teach my book. I have done PowerPoints, and now I've been told that people want me to put it into a DVD. Probably will come out next year and a half. But I believe that when you look at my book and the kids see the book, that and the parents and teachers, they will see that, wow, my kid is not all of a sudden a monster. I have no clue what's going on with them. I really understand a little bit of what they're dealing with. So knowledge is power.
All right. I really appreciate the work you've done. It's a pleasure to have met you. Pleasure to have had you on my show.
Thank you, Clay. It's been a pleasure being with you also. I've had a good time.
All right, sure. And best of luck. Now, tell people again where they can get your book, how they can get it. I've got links up on my website under your name. If you want to tell people about this show, the links to the show are up there. And
the easiest way to buy my book is through Amazon.
Okay.
And the book is called Unlock the Secret World of Teenagers. If you would like to contact me, either at the end of the book, I've had contact numbers, or on my website, you can contact me through the emails on the website.
Okay, I have understandingourteenager.com.
Right.
Understandingyourteenager.com.
Yourteenager.com. Understandingyourteenager.com. Or you could write me a letter.
All right, sir. Listen, thank you very much. I sure appreciate you being on.
Thank you very much, Clay.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.